And right now, very pleased to have with us the Sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, Sheriff Paul Babeu. And Sheriff, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
Cameron, thank you, sir. Appreciate all your support.
Listen, we are always glad to talk with you. How are things going right now in Pinal County?
Well, we're bringing the fight directly to the drug cartels from Mexico who think they can come into the United States. They think they own the place, and we're sending them a loud and clear message that they don't. They're not only not invited, they're not going to be allowed to pass through. We're the #1 pass-through county in America. 241,000 illegals were apprehended last year alone. Over 400,000 got through that were never apprehended. That's the estimates from the Border Patrol. So clearly, the border is not more secure than ever before, contrary to what Janet Napolitano, the lady who's in charge of Homeland Security, tries to convince us through simple argument that that's the case.
Yeah, right now we're seeing a report, Sheriff, that U.S. authorities launched a nationwide sweep of drug trafficking suspects, declaring the crackdowns a retaliatory strike against the U.S. operations of Mexican drug cartels after the killing of an American agent in Mexico last week. Are you seeing an increase in cartel activity since the last time we've talked?
Absolutely. And I can tell you, and people try to say, oh, we're being alarmist. Well, wait a minute. What happened to warning our free society and our citizens of the dangers, not just from a public safety perspective, but literally a national security threat to our country? When the majority of people are coming through this unsecured border, we don't know who they are, where they're coming from, or where they're going. That's a problem. And back several months ago, we used to believe that there were 40, 50-plus lookout posts for scouts from cartels that had high-point terrain features or mountains in Pinal County that was providing intel or safe passage, basically, for these cartels by just looking direct line of sight with binoculars, night vision. They live there 3-4 weeks at a time, resupplied with food and water. Many times they're armed. And now the federal government, Homeland Security, and officials that work for Napolitano and Barack Obama said in a briefing, and Senator McCain was right there, saying both between Tohono O'odham Indian, the tribal reservation that connects to Mexico, in my county, Pinal County, is there's 75, as many as 100 of these locations where foreign-born criminals have the high points of terrain. How have we arrived at this point in America that somehow this is acceptable?
You know, I think the answer is it's not acceptable to most people, Sheriff. It's not. And there are a lot of things that aren't acceptable. I'll tell you another thing that really bothers me. You know, the ICE agent who was killed in Mexico last week and his partner who was wounded, I was reading a news story last week, and I did not realize that this was the case. Our law enforcement officers, when they go south of the border to help, they are disarmed. They are not allowed to carry firearms while they are on duty in Mexico. These guys were sitting ducks. Again, I can't think most of America agrees with that policy.
Well, not just that. How are we sending our protectors, our enforcement officers, who then become targeted in a foreign land without weapons? It's absolutely asinine.
I mean, would you send one of your deputies out on patrol without any way to defend himself?
Absolutely not. In fact, we just purchased 130 AR-15s for my deputies, so we're no longer outgunned. And we bought night vision goggles. I'm going after these guys. I'm trying to purchase ground-based radar. So we're going to hunt them down and track them down and bring them to justice. And they are coming through here at an unprecedented level. We had just ended 2 4-day operations in the last few weeks here, and we had local, county, state, and even some federal partners did tremendous work with us, and we arrested 212 of these criminals, seized 16 weapons, many of them semi-automatic and high-powered rifles, and stolen vehicles and 10,700 pounds of marijuana. This is just in this short period of time. So clearly the border's not secured, and this threat, these people down in Mexico, a $40 billion a year industry, they've nearly toppled the Mexican government. What aren't we getting here? Look south And the devastation, the violence, killing police chiefs, mayors, judges, reporters. It's gotten to the point where they've literally taken control. And if we don't do something fast, not just here in the United States to secure our border, but in Mexico. Even Hillary Clinton suggested the comparison to Colombia of 2 decades ago in the Medellin cartel, where we sent soldiers south to South America.
Yeah, and, I'll be honest with you, Sheriff. I feel so frustrated because I don't feel like we, the American people, are getting the full story here. In fact, the El Paso newspaper published a story a couple of days ago that I guess was based on one of those WikiLeaks cables, but it turns out that one of Felipe Calderon's bodyguards was arrested back in 2008 and was accused of working for the Zetas for the salary of $100,000 a month. One of, Calderon's own personal security guys was working for the Zetas, was telling the Zetas, look, here's where Calderon is, so you don't want to come here because there's increased security, and was helping to arrange the distribution of military firearms to these Zetas in Mexico.
Crazy.
Why were we not ever told about this? We keep being blamed by President Calderon. He keeps saying that the problem lies on our side of the border with our gun laws. Yeah,
we're not just being blamed by foreign leaders that are welcomed into the seat of our government in Washington and given a standing ovation. We're being blamed by our own president. This guy goes around the world apologizing for America, and then all of a sudden every problem that exists in foreign countries, it's our problem. We created it.
Yeah.
We're responsible for everything, including the weapons that go down to Mexico, according to President Obama.
Well,
this is just nonsense, and I'm tired of being shouted down and told to sit down and shut up. I'm not going to. And this is where we as Americans got to stand up for our rights, our liberties, to enforce the rule of law. This is not about skin, race, or national origin. This is about public safety. This is about national security, and the foundation of our liberties is a nation built on the rule of law. And we're not going to be told by anybody, including our own president, that that's not the case.
Next week, President Calderon is going to come to Washington and talk with President Obama. It's going to be the 5th meeting between the two. You've been wanting to meet with President Obama, haven't you?
Well, I've invited him countless times. Here, this guy has gone on 6 vacations last year alone and didn't have the time to come to Ground Zero in Arizona. More than half of all the illegals that enter America come in through our unsecured border. He stopped building the fence, taken us to court instead of helping us, sent teams of lawyers instead of battalions of soldiers, and has put up these insulting signs written in English warning our own American citizens, danger, warning, travel not recommended, in parts of our own sovereign nation. This is the highest insult that our leader can pay. He goes, when the oil spill, he jumps in the water to prove that it's safe. Well, why doesn't he come out here and spend a night in the desert with my deputies and tell us how safe it is?
Yeah. And I've got to ask you, Sheriff, I don't know if you had a chance to see the piece on CBS Evening News yesterday, but, there are apparently 6 ATF agents and executives who they're not going on the record because they don't want to be retaliated against, in essence, but they are talking anonymously to members of the media and saying, look, we were told in some cases to let these suspicious sales of firearms proceed, even when firearms retailers in Arizona would call the ATF and say, hey, you know what, we've got this guy, he looks kind of suspicious, we're not sure about this sale. They were told by ATF, no, let the sale go through under the idea, I guess, that they would follow these guns and see where they ended up. But as these guns were being transported across the border into Mexico, the ATF agents asked for permission to interdict these weapons and were told by their superiors, stand down, let the guns go into Mexico. These agents are saying that more than 2,000 firearms that they know of were allowed to go into Mexico with the knowledge of the ATF. The DOJ has said, oh, no, we've never knowingly allowed that to happen. Have you heard about this, Sheriff? And if so, what's your take on it?
I haven't heard about that specific situation, but it's just you got to be kidding me. You know, that how dysfunctional can we be and disjointed in terms of uniform enforcement, that the threat is real. We live in a post-9/11 world. The border's not secured. All of these problems we can solve. We have the know-how, the ability, and therefore, and that's where I've always said I reject this defeatist attitude of Janet Napolitano and Eric Holder and President Obama, who have resigned our country, that we just can't possibly secure this border. That, my God, this, you know, when is enough in terms of resources. They weren't just frustrated because when is enough is the violence and the crime and the breaking of laws, and it wasn't their frustration and outrage about that. It was, there's going to come a time when we've just done enough and we just can't do any more. And I reject that. That is un-American.
So this is a situation to be managed rather than a problem to be solved.
Well, they're looking for a way to sit down at the table and get right down to business about immigration reform, which many of us Americans fear is outright amnesty. We can't allow that to happen. And this is where we better get our act together, because what does the future hold for America if the Mexican government, and I pray it does not falls to these cartels? That they are our second largest trading partner with America, number one for my state of Arizona, and yet the president, instead of doing something significant, decides to punch us in the gut out here in Arizona and make like our laws and are racially motivated. I have 200 plus of my full-time employees who are Hispanic. What is he saying about them? You know, to inject, this is the guy who's supposed to transcend racial tension in America. Yet every chance he gets, he injects it. He did it out in Cambridge when he attacked Sergeant Crowley and defending his friend who is the black or African-American professor, saying that America, we have a long history in America of singling out or targeting African-Americans or Hispanics. That's just a fact. Our own president said this thing.
Yeah.
And then telling stories about likening our laws, trying to protect our families out here, giving the example in people's minds of a Hispanic father walking down Main Street with his son or daughter holding hands, and then puts an ice cream cone in their other hand, and then he goes on to tell the bad guy of the story, the plot of the story is me or some other officer or deputy here in Arizona that's going to come in and demand papers and to be the brute of the story. And that's just unacceptable, because where are we going to be 5 and 10 years from now in terms of how we look at an institution of justice of our law enforcement when our own president is kicking us in the chops?
Sheriff, again, I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing, and I have not had a chance to tell you congratulations on being named Sheriff of the Year. Thank you,
Tim. I tell you, I share this with all law enforcement across America. It is our honor to stand up, and every day, many of us, since we were little boys and girls ourselves, wanted to serve in this honorable profession, to not just enforce laws, but to protect our families and stand up and swear an oath to protect our Constitution. And we love freedom, and we love our republic, and we will do anything to protect and preserve it. And so I accept this on behalf of not just my sheriff's office, but all of us in law enforcement. It's our honor to serve and protect you and your family.
Sheriff, again, sir, I think the honor and privilege of talking to you tonight is all mine. I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to see you when you were here in Washington, D.C., but I hope that the next time you're in town, I've got an opportunity to shake your hand, and I would love to have you in studio. Thank you again for coming on the program.
That, Cam. And your listeners can also check us out on sheriffpaul.com.
sheriffpaul.com. Sheriff, again, thank you so much, and we'll do this again very soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Stay safe.
All right.